What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another scooter video. My name is Chase Ross if you guys are new to my channel, and in today's video I'm going to be teaching you guys how to foot jam. Whoa! Let's get into it. For starters, just like with every trick I teach, let's put a helmet on first. Now that we have our helmet on, let's make sure we have the basic steps down to get foot jam started. So for starters, what we're gonna wanna do is make sure that we're comfortable with just lifting our back wheel off the ground. We gotta make sure that we can do a nose press, maybe even a nose manual. If you guys need any help learning how to nose manual, click the link in the upper right-hand corner and it'll take you guys right to my how to nose manual video. The reason that this is so important is because it's gonna teach you guys to keep the balance on your front wheel and be able to hop off and back onto your scooter into the ramp. This is gonna help a lot with foot jams because what we're doing is hopping onto that front wheel, hopping back off, riding away like normal. So what we're gonna do right now is we're gonna find a ledge, a rock, a step, or something that we can use to bonk our front wheel off of. Something like this is gonna work perfectly. All we're gonna need to do is just roll up to it and make sure we can do a nose press. That's it. Now that we're comfortable with actually lifting our back wheel off the ground and resting the weight on our hands and then hopping off, we're now ready to dive into foot jams. Let's get into step number one. Diving into step number one, let's talk about what we're gonna be doing with our front wheel. We already know that we're gonna be lifting our back wheel and pivoting off of our front wheel when we do the foot jam. But specifically, what are we doing with our front wheel right here? When it comes to being able to do a foot jam, the only way you're gonna have enough room for your foot to actually get into the wheel is if you turn your bars a little bit. This is gonna allow access for you to wedge your foot right in between the wheel and the fork. Turn your wheel to the side a little bit. You see how the wheel now is exposed? You can now wedge your foot right in between the fork and the wheel right there, so you can actually get into the foot jam. Now that brings us into step number two. We already know what we're gonna be doing with our front wheel. We're gonna be turning it to the side a little bit just to give us enough room to actually wedge our foot into the wheel. But now let's talk about how we're actually gonna get our front foot into that wheel right there. So for starters, what we're gonna be doing, we're gonna be putting our front foot right up here by the front wheel. Normally we stand on our scooter just like this. But for foot jams, the best way to learn them is to actually just cheat and put your front foot right here, ready to go. So when you do turn your front wheel, your foot is literally already touching the wheel. So then when it comes to actually hopping out of a ramp and your front wheel's out, when you turn your wheel, your foot's already there, ready to wedge in. Now, as we dive into the later steps, I'm gonna teach you guys how to do it without wedging your foot into there, but I just want you guys to try that a couple times before we move on to the next step first. So what we're gonna do right here is we're gonna roll forward a little bit, put our foot on the side of the deck, turn our wheel and jump forward, wedge that foot in there, and then we're good to go. That right there is a successful foot jam. Now moving on to step number three. Before we start talking about how to actually roll out of the ramp and approach the foot jam, let's talk about what our body weight's gonna be doing and where we're gonna be placing our body weight to actually do the foot jam. So as you guys know, we're gonna be on our front wheel just like this when we come out of the ramp. So that means our body weight is gonna be leaning forward. If we're not leaning forward, we're instantly always gonna drop back to the back wheel and we're never actually gonna do the foot plant. So when we come out of the ramp, we gotta make sure we're leaning forward to get into that foot jam. Then we're gonna wedge our foot into the wheel just like that. Now our body weight, in order to get back into the ramp, is gonna have to remain on the inside of the ramp. If we're over here leaning really far outside of the ramp, we're gonna go outside of the ramp and fall over. So when we come out of the ramp right here, we're gonna have to foot jam, wedge it in there, lean inside of the ramp like this, and then hop back in. Now that you guys know what to do with your body weight, let's now talk about how to get out of the ramp and into the foot jam. Now in step number four, in order to actually get out of the ramp, we gotta be comfortable with first getting above the coping. So I would recommend that you guys first know how to feeble. If you guys know how to feeble, then you already are gonna know how to have enough speed to get your front wheel out of the ramp and onto the top deck. If you guys need to learn how to feeble, definitely click that link above and I'll take you guys right to my how to feeble tutorial. But anyways, back to foot jams. When we're first coming out of the ramp like this, we're lifting that front wheel just a little bit, and right here is when we're gonna start to turn our front wheel to the side just a little bit, and then as we're coming down on top of the ramp up here, that's when our front foot is going to slip over into the front wheel and wedge into the wheel. Now I want to make a pointer. You do not want to have your front wheel all the way over here if you're doing the foot jam. The ideal position is about 2 to 3 inches away from the coping. The closer you guys can get it to the coping, the easier this trick is going to be, because it's going to be a lot easier to get back into the ramp if you're closer to the ramp. If you're all the way out here, imagine that hop that you're going to have to do to get back into the ramp. So I always recommend try to get it within a couple inches of the coping. Anywhere up to 6 inches is good. I've even gone as far as laying down tape on a ramp to know as my marker, if I go past that line, I should just give up on that one and come back and do it again. So let me give you guys a quick example of this one real quick, getting close to this coping, as close as we can. As you guys can see, my front wheel was literally within 6 inches of the coping right here. Actually, as far as the sheet goes, it was about halfway. So that was a perfect distance in order to get back into the ramp. But real quick, let me give you guys one quick tip that you guys can do if you guys are having trouble to actually get into that foot jam. I know it's kind of hard just to commit to diving out of the ramp onto your front wheel. It gets a little scary sometimes. So a quick cheat that you guys can do is literally come out of the ramp, do a feeble, and then from this position right here, just wedge your front foot and lean forward. And it'll help mentally get you guys ready for the actual foot jam. Now this seems like a perfect time to talk about what to do if you lean too far forward. The best thing to do is just to push the scooter between your legs, hop over your scooter, and run down the ramp. If you get caught up on your scooter, sometimes this can force you to nosedive and run face first into the quarter pipe. You don't want to do that. If you feel like it's not going to work out well or you're leaning too far forward, kick it between your legs and run through it and run it out as fast as you can. Avoid doing that trick by maybe even practicing just pushing the scooter through your legs and learning how to bail out of the trick before you actually have to. But back into the video now. I'm getting excited because we're now on step number 5. This is the one that's going to separate the men from the boys. Right now, we're going to be doing the foot jam, and now we're going to actually have to hop back into the ramp. This is a little bit tricky, but as I was talking about earlier, you guys want to make sure that you keep your body weight inside the ramp. If you're over here leaning outside of the ramp, it's not gonna work. So make sure you have your body weight inside the ramp. As you guys can see right here, my body weight is leaning inside of the ramp. So when I'm able to hop out of the foot jam, it makes it a lot easier to go back into the ramp. Once you hop back into the ramp, you're staying balanced, you're moving that foot back onto the deck, and then you're rolling back down into the ramp. Just like that. How awesome is that? You just did your very first foot jam. But now that you've done your foot jam, you got your foot on the side of the deck still. Let's get that foot off the side of the deck and move into an actual foot jam. So now let's move both of our feet on our deck just like we're normally standing on our scooter. And now let's retry that again. Perfect, just like that. You guys are now able to get into the foot jam from standing on your deck the proper way and get that foot wedged into the front wheel, hop back into the ramp and roll down, and you just land your first foot jam. That right there is how to foot jam. But real quick, before you guys go out and send your very first foot jam, I wrote a couple tips that I want to read off real quick that you guys should just keep in the back of your mind while you guys are doing this trick. So tip number 1, you gotta lean forward. It's so important that you guys lean forward. The more you lean forward, the easier it's gonna be to actually get back into the ramp. Now for tip number 2, you wanna make sure that you're turning your wheel at least a 45-degree angle. The more you turn your front wheel, the easier it's gonna be to get your foot wedged into the fork. Now while your foot's wedged into the fork, you gotta make sure, like I said before, you're leaning forward and then also you're keeping the pressure on the front wheel. It's gonna be a lot easier to be on the ramp and not like slide out a bunch if you have the pressure onto the front wheel. And then that way you can actually pop off the front wheel and jump back into the ramp. Now, jumping back into the ramp, another tip you guys want to keep in the back of your mind, lean into the ramp. If you're not leaning into the ramp, you're not going to get back into the ramp. And now on to the last tip. Don't use the cheat too much. It's a good cheat and it allows you to get into the foot jam having your foot up by the neck too, ready to go inside of the foot jam, but you don't want to overuse it. You want to make sure you can get into the foot jam and practice it with it, but then once you're comfortable with the foot jam, put your foot back behind the neck and get used to just riding normally and then wedging that foot into the foot jam. It's going to be a lot easier for you if you're doing the foot jam mid-run. Say you do a line and the trick before is like a buttercup. You land with your foot behind the neck. It's going to be a lot easier and a lot more comfortable if you already know how to foot jam with your foot behind the neck because you'll be able just to move it in front, do it like a normal foot jam, and then you're good to go. But that right there is all my tips. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know what you guys think about it down below in the comments, and while you guys are down there, drop a trick that you guys want to see me do a tutorial on in the next one, and I'll make sure to get it done for you. But that right there is going to wrap it up. Give me a big old thumbs up and smash that subscribe button. I put a lot of effort into these tutorials, so I hope you guys enjoyed them. I always try to pack as many tips as I can into one video so you guys can watch it, go out and learn it in the same day. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Later.